I am putting my foot in the sand and saying once again, Ooo'S final form is what the f? It's been almost a year since we last had this discussion on a show that ended nearly 7 years ago. But never have I seen something so evenly divided and heated as Kamen Rider Ooo'S final form. But still, you guys are squabbling over which form is Ooo'S final form. And this is starting to turn into a real life build situation. I know in my last video I posed the pros and cons of each form in consideration, but I purposefully didn't take one of these sides because what I posed at the fourth option, maybe I did it too subtly. Let's jump back into this. Kamen Rider Ooo'S is a zany, ska-filled, colorful masterpiece entry in the Kamen Rider universe. This was one of the first times we had a main rider using so many pieces to perform a main henshin. We have 3 coins inserted into the belt, and then of course the coin scanner as well. Man, I wish it was as simple as the good old days where the rider would just have the belt and maybe another piece to activate it. You know? Simple. But this design for the belt goes along with many things I feel everyone has overlooked with the series. So let's take a step back. Kamen Rider Decade was sort of the bookend of the new launch of the Heisei era riders. His belt design featured a single item with the belt, something that had become a mainstay before his season. Now we all know the series didn't do very well, even for a fan service season, and they cut the show early to both end the run of Decade and to also have their new season start a few months before the Christmas toy buying frenzies. Now with having Decade being a bookend to this first relaunch and also having him kick off the new riders to follow it, it would make sense to change the formula up a little bit and create something next that would be similar to what you would expect, but also very different, but not too different, otherwise we might lose people again. So then we got a rider who was composed of 2 people. Together they have to transform, and together they have to fight. We had never seen anything like this before, but it is very similar to the Den-O setup with having multiple personalities clashing in a fight. Double had many different forms, and then we got a more powerful one over those in the form of Fang, but the drawbacks of using it outweighed everything. Double eventually got their clear final form in Extreme, and the only variation of what we see differently is the Extreme form in A to Z, and then of course Joker, but those are clearly either movie variants or just extended forms. So after Double comes Ooo'S, and with Ooo'S we have a way more complex version of the double memories. We now have 3 combos instead of 2, and this goes back to the give them something similar and then give them something new mentality. But when it came to Ooo'S, everything else seems normal by Kamen Rider standards. Your basic hero, a corporation who helps them out but secretly has their hands tied with the bad guys of the series, their base is a cafe, and I could just keep going on. So what is new about this series? And for that answer, we actually have to look forward. The series following it follows Double and Ooo'S with collecting all of these gimmicks, but it's through the acquisition of these that unlocks a clear final form. But I want to specifically look at the endings to these shows, the last episode fights. In Decade, he is in his complete form. In Double, they fight in the extreme form. Ooo'S, we have Tajador ending the fight, and we'll come back to that. But in Forze, he starts the fight in the strongest form of Cosmic and then warps himself from the main villain to the gymnasium of the school. Here he's joined by the entirety of the Kamen Rider Club and proceeds to then beat up our main villain untransformed. He literally headbutts the guy before transforming into the base state we see in episode 1 and defeating him. How? Why? Because Gentaro had something worth losing. Gentaro had all of his friends there, cheering him on and fighting with him, and we see that it didn't matter what form he took on because he's grown so strong over the course of this show, and the friendships he's forged are going to stand against this villain even if he himself is unable to. This was painted very clearly in the show's final episode, but Ooo'S did the exact same thing. But I'll come back to that. So I asked on Twitter, what to you denotes a final form for a rider? Final form to me isn't the strongest form they can become. It's about its importance to the story and characters, whether it be the form they choose to fight with, or despite choosing something statistically weaker, is stronger to them because of the scene or mindset behind it. This is exactly Forza in a nutshell. Ooo'S' final fight with the last villain sees the use of Tajador, mainly because it's one of the strongest combos and one not used as much, but mostly because of the story with Ankh. It's within this form Eiji feels more comfortable and strongest. It's very similar to Double's ending with Philip. Another one we can chalk up into this would be the pinnacle of their power. The bond they forged with said powers and their friends along the way have all culminated into this form. This exactly describes decades with unlocking all of the previous riders, or Double's bond with Shotaro and Philip. A final form to me doesn't mean the greatest power or the strongest abilities. It represents the symbol of accomplishment that a hero has undergone to achieve despite the adversity in their way. However, it can also mean a large sacrifice for the greater good. So what is Ooo'S' sacrifice in the show? I can see how this would be applicable to recent series, especially if we look at Build's more recent episodes where a character is literally telling him not to use this power because he'll die. But again, in Ooo'S, his sacrifice really comes when he accepts Kogami's offer and agrees to fight this through to the end. I feel like it needs to be the undeniable strongest form that the rider has access to. So would that be Putotira or Super Tatoba? I mean, one is a tank of power and the other is so strong it can travel back through time. I think this can apply to other series as well, but Ooo'S is a special one in this regard. Now remember how I said Double was introducing new things while keeping it similar? And Ooo'S did this as well? I am putting my foot in the sand and saying once again, Ooo'S' final form is that he doesn't have one. He's the Swiss Army knife of Kamen Rider. Whatever type of monster or adversity he has to face, he will use a combo that is best suited. But Squall, Putotira is clearly the final form. It's so powerful and used near the final arcs. I mean, true, but look at Build. This show right now helps back up my claims so much because they're doing the exact same things. What happens when Sento uses the hazard trigger? Well, he unlocks a form that makes him lose control, much like Putotira. But we already have some forms that are, as of now, just as powerful or better equipped to not have to resort to that power that makes him lose control. So in Build, that one is clearly not the final form. Okay, that's Build, but we're talking about Ooo'S. Alright, well allow me one more reference to Build to support this case. Cross Z and Grease. When these two fight, Stock constantly confirms their hazard levels. Cross Z's changes and fluctuates based on the form he's fighting in, but overall has still gone up over the season. And the same goes for Grease, but if you haven't noticed yet, Greasy Boy still hasn't had a power up of any kind, and yet he's still getting stronger in this one form. What if Eiji has a hazard level too? Unlocking and fighting with Putotira helped raise this overall power. In another comparison to Build, Sento fights with best matches, which can be similar to Ooo'S' matching combos. But if Rabbit Tank is the best match right out of the gate in episode 1, then what the f is Tatoba? It's a way to immediately signal to the viewers that it won't matter what form he uses, they're all powerful and strong in their application. But Squall, Double didn't have a match of any sorts. And you're right. It was actually me rewatching A to Z that made me realize that Ooo'S doesn't have a final form. And I'm not talking about the scene where he shows up for the first time. I'm actually talking about Double's final fight. Double versus Eternal. What does he do? He doesn't rush in with Extreme, the clear, strongest form. He plays the field and does a boss rush of combinations in order to defeat Eternal. And if this hadn't been done already in Double, we would have for sure saw this with Ooo'S, but since the main villain could only fly into that coin repository in the sky, we needed the combo that could also fly, i.e. the best suited combo for the job at hand. I'll leave you with this. If Putotira is so strong and Eiji's final form supposedly, why does a villain take those powers and use them? Even more, why does a villain who is using the strongest power in the series still lose to a form that was introduced halfway in the show? Think of this like Pokemon. Something will always be weaker to another combo, and Eiji grows stronger over the course of the show. What do I have to say about Super Tataba? Well, if this conversation was only limited to the TV series, then no form is the final form. That's clear. But I do agree that Super Tataba is the closest thing we actually have to a final form. It coming after the series confirms that there was no final form planned for the series, and they needed to fill that in because of other writers and so forth. But this can also be compared to Den-O, when the final form in the show is either climax or liner form, based upon your opinions again, but they after the fact made it clear that super climax form was the real deal, since they never got a chance to really clear that up in the show. I hoped this helped, and I stand by there is no final form in Ooo'S, something I really like the idea of, but obviously it didn't work the best in execution, and we have gone back to clearly having defined final forms. Ooo'S is such a unique entry, and if you haven't watched it all, I highly recommend it. If it wasn't that good, would we still be talking about it all these years later? It has been brought to my attention that YouTube is changing the subscription feed and how it works, meaning it no longer works. So if you enjoy these videos I do here and don't want to miss one, please go to my channel after this, click on the little bell to get a notification each time one goes up. I do main videos like this on Fridays and some random fun ones on Tuesdays. The next best thing you could do is follow me on Twitter or even join the new Discord I made and get in on all the new episodes as soon as they drop. Both of those links down below. Thank you guys again for the continued support, and I'll see you next time this debate comes up.